Okay, good evening as well in Czech Republic. Today we have a one match between two teams. This is the day 3 of the group phase. So it means that these two teams did not have any, I would say, confrontations yet, but today they will have this debate on a topic which is connected to law and IT or cybersecurity even. They prepared the topic during 7 days and they will be debating. They don't know which position they will have, but we'll know in a few minutes, of course. But first, we need to ask them to introduce themselves. So I'd like to give the floor first to Miss Martina Paliarikova. Welcome.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Martina. I study in Masaryk University, and I'm really excited to meet you all. And my fingers are crossed for you. Good luck.
Thank you and welcome. We have in Manchester Miss Fatimatu Zahra Diallo. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It is an honor to be here with you today, and good luck to everybody.
Thank you. Welcome. We have as well in Masaryk Marianne Chura. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Marianne. Thank you for this opportunity, and good luck to everyone.
Thank you and welcome. We have back in Manchester Mr. Abdullah Atassi. Welcome.
Hello everyone, I'm Abdullah Atassi, I'm from Manchester. Nice to meet everyone and good luck with the final day.
Welcome. Welcome. We have as well Jakub Skutek. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. My name is Jakub, also happy to join.
Welcome. And finally, third member, we have Mr. Adalberto Dionisi in Manchester.
Hi everyone, Adalberto. It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome. I mentioned, of course, as well that there is a coach who will be probably watching the match on the side of Masaryk University, Professor Martin Svech. So this match will be assessed by three judges that we greet, because obviously they will be watching the match today or during the next 2 working days, so means until Tuesday. And the topic you received was the nature of modern economy and prevalence of cyberspace. Sorry, I will restart. The nature of modern economy and prevalence of cyberspace requires an international harmonized approach to regulations concerning the collection, storage, and usage of personal data rather than national. So now we will know which position you will get. I will share my screen for the allocation of positions, and we'll know if you will be in favor or against. Voilà. So normally you should see on your screen 2 positions possible for each team to be in favor or to be against for Masaryk University and for the University of Manchester. Activate in the center and we'll know which position you have. The team in favor will start the match. So this is Masaryk University will be defending the position in favor of course, as a consequence, it means the University of Manchester will defend the position against the motion. It means concretely that the teams will be defending the motions like Masaryk will defend the nature of modern economy and prevalence of cyberspace requires an international harmonized approach to regulations concerning the collection, storage, and usage of personal data rather than national, while the University of Manchester will defend the position that the nature of modern economy and prevalence of cyberspace does not require an international harmonized approach to regulations concerning collection, storage, and usage of personal data and rather than national. So now you have 5 minutes to review your notes for your debate. In 5 minutes we'll hear the introduction of Masaryk University.
Thank you,
Yes.
everyone. The time for your preparation is now over. My name is Anna Maria Urbanova. I will be your host for today's debate. I will be also giving you the visual cues for your debate. So a yellow card when you have 30 seconds left and a red card when your time is up. On that note, we will proceed with the opening statement, starting with the team in favor. Masaryk University debate team, you have 4 minutes.
Okay, so for a word, dear colleagues, let me introduce you to our stance that supports the thesis. Right now, we are in an era where the borderless digital space is increasingly dominating. Therefore, we firmly advocate for a cohesive international framework to navigate the complexities of our interconnected digital landscape. We argue that attempts to build national borders around data is as pointless as trying to draw lines in the ocean. We believe that in today's globalized world, it is no longer possible for economic and security reasons to divide digital data into national and international. First of all, we would like to emphasize the need for legal certainty and global consistency, which supports economic development and security. And just like large multinational companies, people also have to navigate complex regulatory structures, which is very challenging in a field that practically has no borders. However, thanks to the international harmonization of regulations, it would be significantly easier to enforce compliance with laws that are supposed to protect our digital data. Even small states that cannot afford costly lawsuits with large international firms would gain the advantage of leverage because these firms would have to follow the same rules everywhere. An example of effective harmonization is the General Data Protection Regulation, or shortly as we know it, GDPR, which was introduced by the European Union. And this harmonization shows us the data protection standards make it easier to comply with the law, which protects EU citizens and strengthens the position of states in dispute against multinational companies. Such consistency is key to ensure that privacy and data protection rights that are generally respected and provides a clear, predictable legal environment for both businesses and consumers. On the other hand, multinational companies would be forced to comply with standards in all countries equally, which would make their cooperation more efficient. They wouldn't have to adapt to different national legal regulations. So an international standard similar to GDPR would dramatically simplify these complexities, reduce compliance costs, and promote a more conducive environment for business innovation and growth. To conclude, we believe that an international harmonization for data protection is not a preference, but it is an imperative for the digital age. Harmonized regulations not only make a business practice more efficient, which helps the economy, they help navigate the legal space dealing with data protection and prevent unnecessary legal disputes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your submission. We'll now hear the opening statement in the against position. Manchester University debate team, you have 4 minutes.
From I'm audible? Yes. Okay. Sorry. I thank my opponent for the introduction. Dear colleagues, we are going to argue that the nature of the modern economy and cyberspace require national rather than international approaches to regulations. While we recognize that cyberspace and the data economy is inherently cross-border, we argue that the current mechanisms of international regulation are ineffective insofar as they are inherently impaired due to the partisan and political nature of international law, as well as its lack of enforcement mechanisms. On the contrary, states have both a legitimate interest and the enforcement, as well as legislative ability to regulate effectively the cyberspace. Following this line, I'm going to argue that states have an inalienable prerogative to defend their own existence and their citizens, and that they should be able to use collected data to do so. Secondly, my colleague Zara is going to argue that an harmonized approach is unfeasible in circumstances in which states have different values regarding data protection. Thirdly, my colleague Abdullah is going to argue that even if an harmonizing instrument was drafted, it would be very difficult to get the whole or even a substantial part of the international community to agree on it. Turning to the first argument, we must locate cyberspace within the context of modern terrorism and organized crime. Communication networks, cloud computing, and even social media are increasingly being used by criminals to liaise with each other. It is crucial, therefore, that states are able to enact their own laws to regulate the collection and usage of data, which would then enable them to identify potential threats to national security and to eradicate serious crime. Even relatively comprehensive regimes of data protection, such as the European GDPR, in fact enable the state to make its own decisions in the field of national security. As this is also recognized in the Treaty of the European Union in Article 4.2, which states that national security remains the sole prerogative of each member state. But this is not only essential and effective for the state to collect and use data to prevent crime and terrorism, as the Court of Justice of the European Union recognized and approved in the Ministerio Fiscal case, which involved Spanish legislation using IP addresses to trace and monitor stolen phones. It is also more efficient in terms of protection of data users, since states, as opposed to international bodies, have the ability to introduce independent adjudicatory bodies and mechanisms of public scrutiny and enforcement, which can check any potential abuse of power by intelligence agencies. In the UK, for instance, the Investigatory Powers Act in 2016 established a double lock procedure through which the interception of data must be approved by an independent judicial commissioner. In conclusion, as states have a right to protect their citizens and their national security, they should be allowed to regulate data collection of their own accord, especially as they are more capable than international organizations of preventing data abuse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have now heard the opening statements in both positions, starting with the rebuttal position in favor. For the first rebuttal, Masaryk University debate team, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you to my opponents, thank you to my colleague Martina, who introduced our side of this debate, which I will now further explain as to why the international approach is the better choice, if our goal really is the protection of internet users' personal data. Internet, as we know it, doesn't really have borders, and nowadays more than 5.3 billion people in every country and every corner of the world can access it, and as it is an international phenom, we need to protect it as such. International approach would also give the chance to power to small countries, whether it will be countries smaller in population or in capital, giving them higher chance of succeeding in protecting personal data of its citizens while still having all the benefits of having access to certain internet sites and companies. As by doing it alone, they will risk the companies leaving their countries or monetizing their access. And that has already happened on several occasions, such as in 2016, when the Russian government passed a regulation which required foreign companies into storing their personal data of Russian citizens on servers located within countries' borders. LinkedIn then decided to shut down its Russian operations rather than continue operate under those conditions. Could you imagine a small country forcing a multi-billion-dollar company like Facebook or Google into obeying with their strict regulations? In our interconnected world, many companies are operating across many, if not all, the countries in the world, thus meaning they face different jurisdictions, different set of regulations in different countries. International approach solves this by promoting consistency and clarity in data protection, which benefits all the parties. We have seen the case with GDPR, which is a regulation by the EU, and it forced companies which operate in EU into complying with GDPR. Failing to do so would result in fines and penalties. Could you imagine if companies would have to follow 27 different forms of such regulation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now hear the rebuttal in the opposition. So Manchester University debating, you have 2 minutes.
I'd like to thank my colleague for this very interesting point. You stated that having an international harmonized approach allows smaller countries to prosper within the economy. However, I believe that we strongly believe that as sovereign states, these countries are in a better position to know the needs of their citizens and know the security needs within their own borders. Now, an international harmonized approach will not be feasible because different states value personal data differently and to a different extent. For example, the United States values the free flow of personal information in such a way to promote and strengthen economic growth. The white paper of 2011, the white paper titled International Strategy for Cybersecurity, reiterates the United States commitment to the free flow of information. Now, on the other hand, the EU values more the privacy of its citizens than the United States does. Because, for example, if we take the General Data Protection Regulation, Article 45 stipulates that to have a free flow of data in third countries, the Commission has to be satisfied that that third country has an adequate level of personal data protection within its own country. Finally, Russia has a more protectionist stance when it comes to data protection because there is a rule, the data localization rule, which states that the processing and storing data of Russian nationals has to be done within Russian databases. And so we see that these different countries and these different territories have different approaches when it comes to the protection of personal data. Thank you.
Thank you for your submission. We will now proceed to second round of rebuttal. Team in favor, Masaryk University, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. First, I want to point out your argument about different countries having different needs. International cooperation does not mean United Nations level of cooperation. It simply means that countries of similar beliefs, which there are many, like for example, the European Union, which connects 27 countries with unique economies and unique cultures, and they are working together and they passed their own legislation called GDPR. As for my own arguments, I'm going to talk about economic factors, especially from the point of view of the companies. Because could you imagine that corporations and companies would follow 200 different unique legislations regarding data collection and privacy? When we take GDPR, which is a very complex, because legislating data privacy is a very complex issue, and so was the case with GDPR, and it took companies time to adapt to this new legislation. As for example, Meta, which is a multi-billion-dollar company with the best lawyers, and when they launched a new app called Threads, and still took them several months to adapt to this new legislation, and it took them several months to enter European market. Another thing is that, for example, Facebook. When Facebook came to Europe in 2006, 2007, could you imagine it would enter Europe if there were 27 different GDPRs? Because as we all know it, let's face it, the current internet was built and was revolutionized by corporations like Facebook and Google. And back then they were simply small companies. And there may be new small companies with new amazing ideas, which are going to change the world for better, which are going to change the internet. And because of these walls that are built or maybe built around the internet, it will not be possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now to hear the second rebuttal in the against position, University of Manchester debate team, you have 2 minutes.
I thank everyone for their submissions and would like to start with some quick rebuttal. The entire proposition argument relies on a few fundamental principles. A, that they are actually able to implement certain and proper international law. The reality is they argue two main benefits. They argue a benefit of legal certainty, which is better for companies, and they argue a higher chance of succeeding for those companies because due to this certainty. However, the problem with this is most international law is customary. Most of it relies on a cooperation from certain companies and nations to work. There is no certainty. There is no mechanisms of enforcement. There is no mechanisms to actually ensure that these companies and these countries are abiding by these rules, because the framing of most international law, whether that be conventions, applies in a way such as the Convention on Cybercrime applies in a method of convention. If anything, that flips the proposition's argument on its head and provides more uncertainty, as companies don't actually know what they are going to be enforced on and what they're not going to be enforced on. Which brings me kind of to my main point. The problem with international cooperation to this level is the fact that the nature of data collection and the nature of the cyberspace is it develops so quickly, as admitted by proposition, that in order to implement these rules in a time-effective manner, this cannot be done at an international level. It has to be done at a national level. This is because international cooperation is so difficult and time-consuming that even if you look at conventions, for example, an additional protocol to the Convention of Cybercrime, from the point in which it was accepted in 2017 to the point which it was adopted in 2021, that was 4 years in which the cyberspace market has changed so much, in which so many companies have changed and adapted their practices to what is coming in 2017 and to what is implemented in 2017. By the time that 2021 rolls around, the technology has changed so much and the practices have changed so much that you now need new implementation. Therefore, even at their best case scenario, they lack effective implementation mechanisms.
Thank you. This concludes the rebuttals. We will now hear the closing statements. Starting with Masaryk University debate team, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, you said our two main arguments. Well, I agree that there are big arguments, that I would say our main argument is that the leverage the countries have when they are working together. Second of all, your point of view, I would say, is mostly optimistic and idealistic, because you say that when countries are working on their own, they are maybe more flexible. That may be true. However, it's the only way to work together, because you can be fast as you want, but if the corporations would not follow the rules, nothing's gonna happen, or they would simply leave the market. To close off all our other arguments, as we already said, it's a lot better for globalization. It's a lot better for cooperation between states, for building the relationships and interconnectivity of the world. And also, economic growth is a big factor, because it cannot be understated how it's important that internet is as free as possible, and that will be achieved only when there's as little or as few GDPRs or as few privacy regulations as possible. And it's important that these regulations are as similar as possible. So subsequently, it's better for protection of customers, because when you have 200 regulations, and even if the state decides to follow them, it will and as you said, it's flexible. I get it, but these are super complex issues, and for the corporations, it will take some time to adapt to these new regulations. So to close it off, internet is like an ocean. It's ever-changing. It's interconnected pool of ideas, and building walls around national jurisdictions will not work. Thank you.
Thank you for your submission. For the against position, University of Manchester debate team, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you for your argument. We argued against this motion in 3 points. First, Adalberto argued that with the prevalence of terrorism and organized crime nowadays, states need national measures within their own jurisdictions to tackle the issue, because different states are faced with different threats. And it's not for the international community to tell a sovereign state how to deal with these problems. Secondly, I have argued that different states value personal data at different lengths. For example, I took the example of the United States, that's more liberal in its usage of personal data, the EU, that's on the more conservative side, and Russia, that's more protectionist when it comes to its measures to do with personal data. Finally, Abdullah argued that the internet is constantly evolving, that cyberspace is constantly evolving. And even if we were to implement an international harmonized approach, it would take too much time. And it's better for each state to implement their own regulations within their own time and not have to follow the international way of doing things. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your submission. This now marks the end of your debate. You can relax. You are no longer graded after this point. You can take a sip of water. It is now round 3 debate that has concluded for both teams. For Masaryk University debate team, there is actually still a round 1 debate, which is waiting for them in a few days, I believe next week, which got rescheduled due to scheduling conflicts for academic season of the participants. So both Masaryk University and Akureyri University still have to wait for the round 1 debate. But nevertheless, congratulations for your round 3, for your for one team, full conclusion of your group phase, and for the other team, almost a conclusion of group phase. Well done. Of course, 3 judges, as always, will review your match. We will provide you the scores as soon as the results are confirmed by the team. And in the meanwhile, I would like to give you the floor to kind of reflect on the match, on the preparation, perhaps starting with Masaryk University, Ms. Palerikova. How did you find the debate? Are you perhaps already familiar with the topic?
Well, how we take familiar? We all are meeting some kind of GDPR. I don't know if United Kingdom has the GDPR, but in our country we constantly have to sign something with GDPR. So a bit familiar, but the arguments against harmonization were quite surprising for me when I was prepared for this side. So I learned something new, and it was really great to hear all of the arguments, and also that we actually met with some of the arguments. So it was great, and this match was really exciting. So thank you.
Thank you very much. What about University of Manchester's team, Mr. Atassi?
Yeah, it was a kind of really interesting debate. We kind of, unlike the previous 2 debates, I feel like both teams, we were on the same page in terms of the 4 arguments. So the 4 arguments that were given to us were the ones we were probably going to give. I mean, for the first 2 debates, we kind of seemed to have completely different approaches. I feel like both teams came in with a kind of same mindset, same approach, which I think made for a smoother debate.
Thank you. Mr. Churla, how did you find the debate? Perhaps did you hear arguments from the other side that were unexpected, or perhaps arguments that your team also prepared for the other side?
Well, I would agree with Abdullah that our approaches were similar to these topics. So even though we were hearing it from the other side, we were familiar with what we were hearing. So I think we knew how to react at least a bit to it. Also, this time I had no idea what the topic was about. Like when I opened the email, I was like, what is this? So for me, it was a great learning experience in this week to learn so much about technology and data protection and how it's important and how it's probably going to be more important in the future. And let's see, we will see what approaches our states will take.
Right. Thank you for sharing. Before I give the floor to Manchester University debate team, Just also information or perhaps a reminder, in case you receive also for the further rounds, you receive a topic that you might be unsure about, don't hesitate to let us know. We will provide clarification so long as it's not before the day before the match. Our team will provide you some tips perhaps and share the answer at the same time for the both teams. So you are always on the same ground when it comes to information from our side. What about you, Mr. Dionisi? How did you find the debate? Perhaps very surprised by some of the arguments from the other party?
Yeah, I expected the GDPR argument. I think it's a really good point because it's a regime that works. And to reply to Martina, I was wondering if the GDPR applies in the UK. Technically, it doesn't, but it's been introduced effectively with the, I think, Data Protection Act. So it applies as well. Overall, I think a quite difficult topic because it's still developing. There's also all the AI issues which we didn't touch upon, but very interesting. Yes.
Thank you. And for the both sides, really, like it looks like you had good traction during the rebuttals. So on that side, you really did well. And with that note, also, if I can pass the floor to Mr. Skutek, how did you find the debate?
Oh, I found the debate really interesting. I really enjoyed the topic. Actually, it was my first debate as I couldn't join either of the proposed date or the last debate. So it's really exciting for me, especially to come up against one of the best law faculties in Europe, and I was really happy to join.
Thank you for sharing. And to round us up in the feedback, Ms. Diallo, how did you find the debate?
To be honest, this was the hardest topic I've had to research so far during in my whole debating years. But yeah, it was very interesting to hear the other team's arguments. Obviously, we came up with the same arguments as well because we had to prepare the same sides. And it was very interesting to hear those same arguments come up again. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I can only say it would be really good if you would be able to stay in contact. Of course, it is good to stay in touch. You are from different jurisdictions. It might be of a benefit, especially with the globalized system. And of course, with the borders being a bit less clear in the digital area, it might be of benefit. We do also have a supporting activity for this actually in April when we have a mid-edition ceremony where you will also find out the matches for the 8 finals, as well as the little networking opportunity where you will be able to meet students that you've met in the previous debates. I know you might have a question, how does it work if it's virtual? But we've tested it over the years and you'll be able to have both direct conversation as well as a group chats. And we also have some activities planned there. And for the final part of the session, since it's a day 3, round 3 debate, I would have one question for you, perhaps to start us off. And that is both teams, you are following in the steps of the teams before you in the competition. Did you perhaps already have a notion of what you might be expected to experience during the competition? So perhaps starting with Manchester University. Did your predecessors give you a hint?
Not really. I mean, they kind of explained it to us. I don't think we really understood how it would go until we actually took part. I mean, I do other debating, and this is very different to other debating styles that I'm used to.
Right, thank you. What about Masaryk University team? Do you have already certain expectations when you were coming in for the debates?
Well, if I can say, I watched the record from the last year or something like that, and it couldn't prepare me for this session because it is really different when we speak this in this online milieu than we would speak face-to-face. To be honest, I would really prefer the face-to-face, because when I have to speak to the camera, I'm really shy. So it is hard for me to speak. I have to be fixed. I have to be in track, and it would be much more how to say that. It would be better for me face to face. So, and nothing could be prepared for this, but it is a really great experience. Obviously, every experience is a good experience, but face to face is better all the time.
Thank you for sharing. And indeed, it's a different bag of challenges, perhaps, being in a virtual environment to being in person. When the competition started, the first debates were happening all the time in person. Actually, some of the finals were happening in a hybrid format. So 1 or 2 members were actually connecting virtually, and the other member was joining from in person in The Hague. But speaking about the different skill sets required for the competitions that you might have perhaps improved on or experienced for the first time with the participation, what would you say that is a skill perhaps, or an experience that stands out from the past debates? Perhaps for the Manchester University, Ms. Diallo or Mr. Dionisi?
Something I think I've acquired throughout this whole experience is my research skills, because most of these topics is not something I particularly was taught about or was familiar with. And so I really had to do a lot of in-depth research on the matter, because that's how I prepare myself for debates. The more I know about the topic, the better it is. But yeah, definitely research.
Thank you. For the same question for the Masaryk University team, Mr. Chura, Mr. Skutek.
Well, I would say that the most important skill I'm learning from this is working with time, because it's quite hard to say everything you want in 2 minutes. I would say that's a quite short period of time, because usually I was participating not in debates, but for example in moot court, and there we were talking for like 15 minutes in total as one side. So that's a totally different kind of time you have, and if you miss something out, it works completely differently, because here when you want to drag to the other side, it takes like 20 seconds or 30 seconds, and then you have 1/4 of less of time to get through your own talking points. So I would say working with time.
Well, thank you for sharing. And on that note, I will not keep you too much longer. It is after all a Friday, and end of the academic week and professional week is upon us. So I want to congratulate you once more on the behalf of organization. Well done for Manchester University for completing your group phase. Best of luck, and also well done for debate to Masaryk University, and best of luck for your final debate next week. And on that note, wishing you a lovely rest of the day and a good weekend ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Good luck to all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.